Hello, Anja. You're now switching to English.
Hi.
Hi. We just had the German session, 30 minutes, and Anja, she's the CEO and director of WerkModul, and she's doing modular buildings, 3D modular buildings, if I'm correct. And you can see her on werkmodul.com or .de. And you also can see her showroom in Berlin at the exhibition center of Berlin, Berliner Messe. And Anja, maybe you can quickly introduce what is 3D module building or modular building for WerkModul.
Yes, hi. So we, with our company WerkModul and second company System im Bau, we have dedicated ourselves to modular building because we think that that's the real future for building in urban environments mainly. Modular building is like a prefabricated building. It's prefabricated in a factory, so you're completely independent from weather, from timing, and it has the huge advantage, one of the biggest advantages being it's incredibly fast. It's about half the time of a classical building you need for it, or conventional. The quality control is much stricter, therefore we have higher quality, and all together obviously leads to also savings on the financial side. So the modular building we chose to represent is the 3D, we call it. It is steel, it's a steel building, but it's already configured, ready-made rooms. You can also work with panels. We have partners who work with panels. Many buildings have been made this way. All the cruise ships are made by panels. It's like if you have a big cruise ship, it's like all the cabins inside are modules, but it's panel built. Therefore, you can see on the walls. While we, in our 3D ready-made room, we have complete classical building. It's the interior is like in a classical conventional building. It's just that the outside is a steel frame, as you would find at with the Empire State Building in New York. It's also a steel frame building.
There is a video on our website with WerkModul, which you can watch, of course, the way you construct it. So you are based, WerkModul is based in Berlin, Germany, but you are also working with a partner within Europe. Can you please explain a little bit more? Who's your partner?
Yes, of course. Our partner is a company in Latvia. They have specialized, they came out of hospitals. They have built quite a few hospitals, then specialized on hotels and on living, on apartments, smaller apartments, social living, student living, hotels. That's kind of what we want to focus on too, because we think that in urban environments, especially in Germany, in the big cluster regions, we have a need of affordable living space, and we have a need of student allocation, and we also, hotels right now, obviously with the crisis, are slowing down a bit, but these three elements are perfect for our modular building, and our partner in Latvia has a huge experience. They just built a I think 12-story building in Sweden, where from the ground floor to the rooftop, they had a difference of 2 millimeters. It's unachievable in conventional building, so to be as precise.
Fantastic. So you already have spoken about different projects you're doing. Many people, when they have a 3D module building in their mind, they think on affordable housing, on cheap housing, on like a typical cheap properties you find out there. But I think this needs to be quite different for what you are doing. It's correct.
Yes, definitely. A lot of people in their mind, they think of containers, of ugly, of not permanent. Our partner from Latvia, they just bought an apartment house in London, which looks amazing. And it's next to a classical building, and you can't see a difference. You cannot see which of the two buildings is the modular one and which is the conventionally built, who's been there for 50 years. They look completely the same. We have now a project in Berlin where we built 300 apartments. They will look fantastic. They have like a glass facade with aluminium parts. So it's a very fancy looking apartment. We have hotels like big chains like Marriott, Steigenberger, etc., who do their hotel buildings in a modular way. So they look exactly the same like other hotels. And if you go into cities like classical urban cities like Leipzig, we have a project where the authorities, the local authorities, want the building to be adapted to the surroundings. And therefore, we have to have a complete stone facade, which is not a problem. It just looks the same. You have a nice elevator, staircase. It's all the same. White corridors, higher rooms. It's just in the mind of many people, it's still considered as being containers, but it's not the case at all anymore.
Okay, so we have just spoken about a few advantages. So I think the main advantage you mentioned today is the time, right? You are pretty fast in delivering, as we call it, the product. And what's your experience in terms of time? How long do you need from the day you get the order from a developer to, let's say, build 200 apartments?
It's pretty fast. Like in Berlin, the 300, we would need about 10 months. We do the whole thing as a general constructor. And so we would also do the ground plate in concrete. And while this is done and the preparation is done, our partner in Latvia will already be producing the rooms and apartments, the modules, and these will then be shipped to the site, on site, and it will take about 2 weeks with a crane to just add them and staple them. In fact, it's stapling them. And then another 2 to 4 months interior work. So for 200 apartments, it would be about 10 months. If there's a building permit, because that's the thing, that the building permit with authorities in Germany takes longer than we need to build. We are now planning a hotel in southern Germany where we will need 3 months and the conventional part will need 4 months. So it takes 7 months, but it's because the conventional part is so much slower.
Okay. I think the other advantage that the planning and the execution is in one hand, right? So you're offering a full service package. That means I don't have to hire an architect. I don't have to go and check the construction site. I don't have to make sure that something gets stolen on the construction site, etc.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We do everything. In Germany, everything regular. You have this. It's called like 1 to 9. We start with the planning. We can also do the building permit, but many of our customers already have a building permit. We would obviously always ask that before they introduce it and before their architect does fancy drawings, they talk to us, because modular building has limits in height, in width, in whatever, due to transportation many times and logistic. So we can do and plan and draw a whole building. We have architects and engineers in our company. We have MEP planners who can do the whole installation planning. We then can also introduce everything for the building permit. If there is one already, we would do probably a little, amend it a little bit, and then it's all in one hand. You don't need any of skilled labor or craft at all. You don't need someone to build in windows. You don't need someone to put on tiles. You don't need an electrician who's doing the anything, the sockets, because it's all done. The kitchen can be in, the bathroom is in there, air conditioning in hotels is already built in. So the whole thing comes completely ready with everything installed, which is a huge advantage, because in Germany, I can speak for Germany, we have now an issue with skilled labor. To find someone putting your tiles on, an electrician or a really good MEP guy, is so hard, and they are fully booked for the next couple of years, some of them. We don't have that issue because we bring all this with us. So you don't have these different people working on a construction site, not talking to each other, creating very often a huge mess, then doing mistakes. No, in our factory, everybody knows what to do. The planning needs to be much more precise beforehand, before we start. It takes a bit longer to plan. But then once we have the detailed planning, everybody does his little thing. And on site, we have a handful of people, 10 people, setting up the whole thing, and that's it.
Okay, that sounds really good. In terms of project size, you already mentioned it. I think it makes more sense if you have a further larger project. What's the sort of minimum surface that you need in order to have advantages and make sense for you to, to take on the job?
I would always say it starts to make sense starting from 800 to 1,000 square meters. So it would always be apartment buildings, student buildings, or hotel. The individual, particular living home for family is not a modular project, because you can't be as individual as you would want to be with your proper house, unless obviously you want to build a new whole area where 100 townhouses are being set up. Then it makes sense again. But one individual doesn't make sense, because we do modular is like a series production. It's like a factory line production, and you can be individual. We try to be it to a certain extent, but it's never going to be my dream house. I want to change this, and have the modular buildings are efficient. The less modules, different modules, types and sizes you have, the more efficient we are, the more cost efficient also we are. So normally we would think for one building about 25% different modules in different size, in different shapes are okay. If you go into an individual house, you will have 50, 60% of different shapes. Then it's not modular anymore, and shouldn't be done. That's where our limit is. There are limits too. Very little, but some are. We have some.
Okay. What is the sort of price advantage you can give to the project developers? And because the topic of the show today, or the webinar, is affordable housing, and how do you combine that? What can you say?
Well, we would always, of course, we do the purchase of all our equipment and materials is much more organized. So at the beginning, when we start a project, you have the building permit. We in the perfect world, we would have spoken to the architect, or we would have designed it ourselves. Then we know exactly what we need. We then can already do a complete list, and we have a procurement division who then buy, with our partners, buy all the materials upfront. We don't have any loss of materials. We don't have any materials that are spare or left over, because we calculate this before we start the building. We already know, okay, that's the amount of tiles or windows, of whatever we need. And this gives us a great price advantage, because there is no waste at all, which we can then also pass on to the builder. And of course, we are so much faster, as we will be only half the time. If you project a big building, which you want then to rent out or to sell, you can go into your marketing 1 year early. So, which, if you have a huge building, can easily be 1 million euro in revenue that comes 1 year early, which is also a huge advantage, and the quality is higher. But for everything that's cost efficiency, it's an efficient procurement policy and an extremely fast building.
We have here a question from one of our clients. She's asking, her name is Irina. She's asking, what is the qualitative difference between modular construction and classic construction? And do banks give discounts on financing? I think she means if it's harder to get a mortgage against the property for a buyer.
It is not. It is not. We thought it might be, because we are doing still some pioneer work here, but no. all our builders and who have been and working with us in the past, they had no issue with their bank at all. So for the banks, they start to understand that this is the same and it's the same quality than a conventional building, even a higher quality. So to answer her question about quality, I give this example in our German part before. We have our showroom in Berlin at the trade shows site. This showroom was brought on a boat, and it's one piece. It's one huge model of over 70 square meter, and it was brought on a boat with a rough sea. Then it was put on a crane onto a truck. It was stood on the truck. The truck was the wrong one. To make a long story short, it was craned about 11 times, and it was driven through Germany and then unloaded. It has nothing, not a scratch, nothing. Nothing happened to it. If I put a conventional room through this kind of experience, it would be destroyed. So no, the quality is much higher, and banks, yes, at the beginning they were like, oh, no, the cost is too low, we can't believe it, this is impossible. So now they understand, okay, this is a very efficient way to build, efficient in procurement, efficient in time, efficient in resources, and they do finance it the same way as they would do with a conventional building. And of course, we are there to support. If in some remote location, the local bank has never heard of modular building and are reluctant, then obviously we are there to help and to undermine via everything with information and buildings. And so, no, there's no issue.
We have another question from, but I think it's in the same direction. I think you replied already, from Mr. Ed Lord. Is modular construction as safe in the event of fires and other natural risks, for example, flooding, storms, etc.?
Yes, of course, it is. The Empire State Building in New York is a steel building. In Berlin, for those who know Berlin, it's the Borsigturm, which has been there for over 100 years, is a steel skeleton building. So no, it's the same. When we go higher than 5 floors, we would do the center in a conventional manner. It means that the stairs, the central stair and the elevator would be done in concrete, and then the modules placed around it. But now, if up for 3 or 4 floors, we can do it all modular, and it's the same. We have the same statics. They are obviously calculated before. We have the same fire resistance class. We go up to R90. We can even do R120, which is never even not for schools. It's not required. So it's the same insulation. There's no difference. It's as safe as everything else.
Okay. I just have a second question on the price. So you mentioned already we have the time advantage, which means that the developer can either rent out his project or his apartments or student housing or hotel sooner. So he's going to have sooner his revenues or her revenues. The other advantage you mentioned is the price, because you have it all in one hand. So you do it all in the fabric, then you transport it to the location, where of course you just build it on the ground. So what is the sort of percentage you can give on to the developer in terms of the price advantage?
By experience, as we will do really everything as a general constructor, we will do the conventional part, which you need as a ground plate anyway. We will do the MEP planning, everything. We usually end up, depending on the region and the local costs of building, between 15 and 25% lower than the average building price in that region for normal standard building. Not the highest end villa building, not the really street. So for us, like a standard average building price, we are between 15 and 25% lower.
Okay, that means that we call them the customer at the end of the food chain, so either the tenant or someone who's going to buy his or her first apartment will have 15 to 20% lower purchase price or lower rent. Is this correct?
Yes, definitely. If if the one building the building also passes on his price advantage, which what we do, but yes, of course, it's lower. Therefore, it's also very interesting for public buildings, for social living, because these are made not of huge rooms, but normal rooms, and they are very often the same type. You have a building with maybe 50 or 60 apartments or 100 apartments, and all have more or less the same layout. You can have obviously 40 square meter, 50 and 60. That's not an issue for us. It's just if we are able to build the same type of bathroom, the same type of living room, but just then add one in one apartment, then these communal or public building offers, we are so much more cost efficient that they can rent them out at their aimed. In Berlin, for instance, it's about 6.5 euro per square meter what social living should cost, and not more. This is possible with modular without having to put huge subventions in there.
Okay, but this is a very competitive advantage. So beside the time, you have a 15 to 20% price advantage, and especially in high priced areas, which, I mean, all the big capitals within Europe, prices are more or less not affordable for local citizens anymore, especially when they want to rent. It's getting very, very tough. That's why we're having all these regulations in these cities given by the government. So I think it's quite important that we focus on this. My last question for you, Anja, today is in terms of the future. How do you see the carbon neutral building in the future? Because there's a lot of people who are asking us the question. Yes, on the one hand, we have to build affordable houses, but on the other hand, we have to do something that is nice to the economy, and as well as to the social and ecological system here. Are there any advantages you can tell us?
Yes, both. We are sustainable. We are quite sustainable because, first of all, we have we respect all the impacts you need, and all the authorities in Germany, for instance, are extremely strict on what your house needs to have in insulation, etc. That obviously we do respect, and then we can also, of course, use renewable energies, for any MEP issues in the house. We are more sustainable because we don't produce waste on the building site. There is no waste. There is not like 50 people running around and spoiling and littering, etc. Because it's so efficient that all the resources are being respected extremely highly. And now for the future, I think modular building is the future for cities, but not alone, because apart from being sustainable and fast and cost efficient, you also need to look at the city. Now, modular building looks the same as a classical building, but I think you need like in everything, you need a mixture. You need a reasonable mixture. You need we do hybrids where part is conventional, part is modular. But for all these problems we have, like too little living space, too little affordable living space, plus the environment, their modular building can be the answer.
Anja, thank you for today, for your time you gave us during your holidays. I really appreciate that. And I would like to have you back on the label. Yeah. Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.